Every few weeks, a story about disruptive behavior from children in public spaces, making adults demand child-free spaces, pops up in my feed. Usually it's restaurants, though I saw a post on r/AMC about disruptive children in a Toy Story 5 show at a movie theater recently, which I'm sure was one of many. In the latest one, a flight in Sweden was delayed a full hour because a 3-year-old wouldn't stay seated before takeoff. Comments on the Fox News Facebook post I saw this on have a mix of come to Jesus anecdotes from personal experiences where similar behavior was corrected, advocacy for family specific sections instead of child free sections, empathy for the parents, and quips about corporal punishment or sedation by drugs I hope are meant to be sarcastic. As a man who does not want to have kids or be responsible for any, but is also realistic about expectations for public places like restaurants and transportation, I totally get being annoyed by seeing and hearing children acting up in public, and definitely appreciate adults only environments when possible, such as adult night at the Museum of Science. That said, I can be realistic and accept that there will be families in any setting open to the public or paid ticket holders for something that does not prohibit children, especially those labeled good for kids on the Apple Map app's About page. And if I want to avoid that, the burden's on me to either track down adults only hours and places or stay home. As I've mentioned on this channel before, I'm a member at the Museum of Science, New England Aquarium, and Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. I visit some mix of these three places about once a week, and there are always families with small children every time, even on the one Friday night I've gone to the MFA. At the Museum of Science, I enjoy going to the live presentations, whether it's Live Animal, Robot Roundup, Lightning, or Explore the Universe at the planetarium. And those always reach capacity. I've been to 3 of the museum's adult nights, and I can safely say I wish they held those more often. I always have to stand at lightning presentations during normal hours because all the seats closer to the front are occupied by big groups of families, and there are always some who leave early because the loud noises from the lightning are too much for the younger children, or the presenter has to tell someone to get off the red carpet because they need to keep a clear path to the exit. At the live animal presentations, there's always some kids or supervising adults with them walking around the displays behind the seating because they can't focus, which does become a distraction in my peripheral vision. Worse, some families will change seats during it like a game of musical chairs because their children can't sit still for the entire 20 minutes. Again, the movement in my peripheral vision gets distracting, which is why I consider it disrespectful. I'm never able to get a front row seat to the robot one, and I always have to be first in line for Explore the Universe half an hour before showtime to make sure I get a seat that's one of a pair in the front row so I can guarantee I'll either have only one adult sit next to me or have that pair of seats to myself. Last time I went to that one, there was loud crying from a child somewhere on the other side of the room that definitely got annoying, which happens here and there. The supervising adults are usually quick to leave with them, and I have to say, I have a lot of respect for the presenters who don't get thrown off or visibly annoyed and just keep doing their thing. At the last adult night, back in January, I got to sit in the front row of a lightning presentation with two friends on either side of me, and there was not a single disruption from the audience. I wish I could go to more presentations like that with an adults only audience. However, I recognize I can either tolerate the distractions during normal museum hours, get up and leave if it gets that bad, wait for the next adult night, or not go to these presentations in the first place. Personally, I don't expect every person or establishment to cater to my preferences. The museum welcomes everyone who buys a ticket, and families with children are a big portion of their visitors. Obviously, lone adults like me are welcome to be a member and visit. I've made my choice to accept some disruptions are inevitable, carve out time for adult night when they announce it, but not let these disruptions ruin my museum experience. Especially because I'm a member who can come back to literally any other one in the future, and often do so. If I'm at the museum on a Saturday morning and disruptive behavior ruins the live animal presentation for me, I can come back the next day for only the cost of a subway ride because I'm a member and an adult with almost no obligations outside of work. Even then, I look at it as a good way to learn to tune out distractions. Personally, I'd prefer supervising adults leave with children they're in charge of when it's clear disruptive behavior won't stop, so they don't ruin it for everyone else, which I can guess would also teach an association of bad actions with bad consequences in the minds of the children. Everyone wins here. The reality is that museums, aquariums, and zoos are always going to be open to anyone with a ticket or pass during normal hours because that's where they'll get the majority of their admission revenue. The burden's on adults who want child-free spaces to wait for an adults-only event, like Adult Night at the Museum of Science or Aquarium After Dark at the New England Aquarium. Except a few minor disruptions during normal hours, or stay home. Same thing with public transportation, movie theaters, airplanes, stores, and restaurants. For movie theaters, I'd argue you have to accept a disruption might happen when you go to see a movie that is, yes, made primarily for children, like Toy Story 5. Let's not pretend otherwise. Last spring, I was extremely fortunate to see both Hoppers and the Super Mario Galaxy movie at the first show of the day on two consecutive Saturday mornings without any disruptions. In both shows, I was one of three adults that made up the entire audience. But I recognize that was an outlier. Generally speaking, adults are going to bring their children to movies like those. If you're an adult who wants to guarantee replicating the audience I wound up sharing Hoppers and Mario Galaxy with, either pay to rent a theater for yourself and anyone else you want to share it with, report disruptive behavior so they'll likely give you a readmit pass after verifying the disruption to try again if the supervising adult doesn't just leave with the disruptive child after a reasonable effort to police their behavior, or just wait for the movie to be available to rent at home. Don't confront the supervising adult, just let it go and move on. When it comes to restaurants and stores, I'd argue Supervising adults should exercise best judgment in some cases, while the burden is on the child-free adults to tolerate some disruptions or don't go to such places in the first place. In the case of restaurants, your best bet is to find somewhere that only admits people who are 21 plus in the first place. Tim Pool made a really good point about how a restaurant like Cracker Barrel makes more money off a family of four buying things versus a child-free couple, because the family of four will buy more items, resulting in a larger bill. That's why such places are extremely unlikely to be adults only or even have adults only hours. As for stores, here's an easy solution to anyone who wants to guarantee not having to witness or hear a temper tantrum at the supermarket or anywhere else. Get everything delivered or pick up a mobile order. I'd also argue that they're good solutions for parents who don't want to have to deal with the hassle of shopping with their children. But at the end of the day, the stores will not discriminate against families with children by default. Though, if children's behavior reaches a point of actual destructiveness, the manager would be completely justified in kicking them out. Same thing with all the other places I mentioned earlier, and even, yes, the airplane story that got me thinking about this. Going back to that at long last, I'd argue the family with the 3-year-old that wouldn't sit still during takeoff should have been kicked off the flight with their luggage after a few minutes if the supervising adult couldn't get the kid to sit down within a reasonable amount of time. Same as if an adult were being unruly. At a certain point, everyone else has a right to get where they need to go within a reasonable margin of the ETA. Unlike extenuating circumstances like bad weather or damaged equipment, unruly passengers of any age can and should be kicked out if they're not adhering to safety regulations. In the case of families with restless children, I believe the airline should get them on the next flight to wherever they were headed, free of charge. And the parents should use that extra time to make sure the kid's ready to sit down for the flight. I'd also say the same thing for other forms of transportation before departure, too. Nobody of any age has the right to be a nuisance or safety liability. But I also recognize children are predictably unpredictable, which is why I say put them on the next flight for free instead of waiting indefinitely for the kid to be able to sit down and be quiet. Nobody is above safety regulations, and nobody of any age has the right to hold up a flight's takeoff because they won't sit still and put on a seatbelt. At the end of the day, child-free individuals should be the ones who have to figure out avoiding families with children, in my opinion. If they're unwilling to rent out private accommodations or get everything delivered to avoid sharing space with them, they just have to accept families with children are going to be anywhere you might go that isn't an explicitly adults only space, like a bar or a restaurant that only allows people over 21, or events like Adult Night at the Museum of Science. They will be on transportation of all kinds, at museums, zoos, or aquariums, quick and full service restaurants, grocery stores, general stores, and anywhere else open to the general public. I'd argue the owner or manager would be justified in kicking out a family with children if the children are actually destroying things and the supervising adults aren't trying to stop them. Innocent until proven guilty, but also being a child or parent does not put you above the rules, especially safety regulations like the airplane seatbelts. Overall, I totally understand child-free individuals wanting adults-only spaces or parents who want family-friendly spaces. However, most places are age neutral, meaning they aren't going to prohibit anyone on the basis of age. I'm not going to get an adults only experience at the Museum of Science unless I wait for adult night. Travelers who want adults only flights won't get that unless they hire a private jet. Anyone who wants adults only grocery stores, never gonna happen. If you feel that strongly about not wanting to potentially see or hear screaming children, go during the hours families are least likely to be there, or pay extra for delivery and move on with your life. That's up to you to figure out, not the store managers. You know what I'd do at the supermarket if I witnessed parents not policing a child's out of control behavior? I walk away and look for something else on my list until they move along and keep my distance. It's not that hard. On that note, I'm going to wrap it up here for the video. Be sure to like it if you enjoyed it. Comment your thoughts on this, whether you agree with my stance on how the flight crew should have handled that situation, or if you disagree, I'd genuinely like to know why. Make sure to subscribe for cultural commentary and rants from a man caught between generations. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.